welcome back to my channel TCNT, which stands for True Crime and Trials, and today I will be carrying on with day 1 of the Groves trial. And after the opening statements, the state calls their first witness. Before I get into that, I'd just like to say that this trial is very fast-paced, very intense, very emotional, and they are firing through the witnesses, and some of them take longer than others, and there isn't very many recesses, and when there is, they aren't for very long. And obviously with the time difference for me, it's hard for me to keep up with it and get videos out, so I'm trying my best to keep up with it. So we'll get straight into the first witness, which is Darian Miles, and she's a registered nurse at the hospital where Dylan was born, and she was working in maternity at the time. She said that the Groves arrived at the hospital at 5:25 in the morning, and her observations of Jessica were that she was uncooperative and disconnected. She did try to ask her a few questions, but she either didn't want to answer and she wouldn't want to answer. It was unusual to Darian because she's used to mothers answering their questions, but Jessica wouldn't, and she didn't present as if she was in any pain, and she was very close to labour, but she didn't ask for pain relief, so that was very odd to them. They did ask for a urine sample from her, but she refused, but they did actually manage to get one through the use of a catheter. They did check her, and she was obviously fully dilated, so they took her up to the labour ward, and as Jessica was pushing, Daniel actually spoke up and said that she had taken heroin 2 days ago, and the reason why she hadn't attended any prenatal appointments is because firstly she didn't realise she was pregnant till later on, and secondly she didn't want to go because she was high most of the time. They now show the drug screen results for Jessica, and then they start going over Dylan's medical record. And when he was born, it was noted that he appeared dusky, pale, and not breathing very well. And sadly, these are all signs in newborn babies after excessive drug use. He was laid on Jessica, but obviously he started having breathing difficulties and was taken into the nursery to be put on oxygen. And Darian said that Jessica seemed uninterested in her baby. And then 4 hours after giving birth, Jessica hemorrhaged. But before that and after she was sorted out after the hemorrhaging, she never asked to see Dylan. Then Darian says that when they first came to the hospital, Daniel seemed scared and worried, and he was there the whole time through the labour and birth, but obviously it took him a while to speak up and say, yeah, she'd taken drugs. She said it seemed like Daniel was looking at Jessica for permission to speak, and then again, neither Jessica nor Daniel asked to see baby Dylan. The cross-examination from Jessica's attorney, asking about what she thought of Jessica's demeanour, and Darian said it was from her experience that she thought Jessica had been used just from the way she was acting, and also confirming that it seemed like Daniel was scared to answer any of the questions and was always looking at Jessica for permission to speak. And Daniel's attorney, just again, it seemed Jessica's presence was intimidating to Daniel. The next witness is Tori Howell. she is a nurse in the nursery, and she would take care of babies after they had been born. And she was called into the labour room, and when she went in there, she said it felt tense, and she observed that Jessica appeared high and seemed she was annoyed to be there. As soon as Dylan was born, after they tried skin to skin, he was taken straight to the warmer, which I'm presuming is some sort of incubator to warm him up. And then he had trouble breathing and was taken into the nursery. Again, she confirms that neither Jessica or Daniel asked about or wanted to see Dylan. And there's a way of testing Dylan for how far along he was, and it was said that he was at 36 weeks, so he was born a month early. And unfortunately, she has seen lots of babies born addicted to drugs, which it's just sad, really, really sad. The cross-examination is Jessica's attorney, and Tori says that signs of withdrawal don't normally show until 24 to 48 hours after the birth. So she didn't actually see Dylan withdrawing. She was just there to get him on oxygen and get him sorted out that way. Daniel's attorney, she asked Tori if she had any interaction with Daniel, and she didn't have much interaction with him at all. But on a different day, she does remember seeing Dylan in the nursery, Daniel in the nursery with Dylan. I keep getting mixed up with these names, I'm really sorry. So that was that for that witness. The next one is Stacey Rific, who was another nurse in the nursery, and she started her shift after Dylan was born. And so when she came on shift, Dylan was in the warmer and on oxygen, and she knew Jessica was on drugs at the time. And she said Dylan started having tremors, he had sweats, sneezing, diarrhea. Dylan couldn't calm himself when crying, so they had to wrap him up and comfort him to help him calm down, because when they're withdrawing, it's, a stimulant, so once they start crying, they can't settle themselves afterwards. And she seems to think that he would have been in pain from the withdrawals, but apart from those withdrawals, he didn't have any other issues. She asked Daniel why Jessica didn't go to prenatal appointments, and he told her she was too high on heroin, and also that she had found out late that she was pregnant. And Daniel also told her that Jessica was a nurse. Stacey also said that Daniel was quiet and a little withdrawn. And Daniel told her later in the afternoon that he'd asked a doctor if meth could be found in heroin. She also noticed a change in his behaviour from earlier, and his eyes were glassy, he wouldn't make eye contact, and his speech was slow, and she believed he was under the influence of something. Dylan was kept in the hospital for 5 days, and he was kept in that long because obviously he was born addicted to drugs, and Jessica was on drugs, so child services and social services were involved, and they had to make plans. So when he was discharged, he went straight into foster care. Cross-examination from Jessica's attorney. When Jessica hemorrhaged, she was transferred to another department, so it was harder for Jessica to actually go see Dylan. And if she'd requested to see Dylan, they would have taken him down, obviously, in the warmer or whatever. But I still don't think she actually requested to see him. Cross-examination for Daniel. Daniel never admitted to or was tested at the hospital for drugs, but he'd been tested by Children's Services that evening and it was clean. So it's a conflict of, you know, the nurse said he seemed under the influence, but drug test says otherwise. So I'm not sure. I don't know if they were seeing something that wasn't there because of the circumstances. I'm not sure. But she did say that it seemed that Daniel had a genuine concern for Dylan. And then both of the defence attorneys start questioning the nurse about her observations of Daniel, and basically it's just down to her experience. There was no proof that he was on drugs, and obviously the drug test came back clean, so they were just making that point clear for the jury that it was just purely based on her experience and there was no proof behind her observations. The next witness is Kristen Proctor Franz. She was the social worker at the hospital, and she received a call from the nursery about Dylan on the 13th of January to say Dylan was ready for discharge, which meant she had to get plans put in place for him. So more or less, as soon as she was told that mum and baby were tested positive for drugs, Dylan would be removed from their custody. And Daniel had told social services that he wasn't aware of Jessica's drug use during pregnancy. How true that is, I don't know. Jessica's attorney said they would never have let Dylan go home with Jessica and Daniel in the current situation. That's from the social worker. Daniel's attorney asked about her observations she had of Daniel, and she didn't have any personal observations of Daniel. Now we're on to the next witness, which is Mandy Burchett, and she's the manager of social services at the hospital, and she was contacted by Kristen about Dylan. Obviously she needed to go to her manager and inform her of the situation so they could both make plans for him. And she said social services had no idea of what plan Children's Services had for Dylan, and obviously both Mandy and Kristen had concerns about Dylan, and the thing comes up about the drug tests. You know, the hospital changed the machine that does the drug tests, and now this new machine, when it tests the urine, it comes back with an unconfirmed positive, which means basically it's positive for drugs, but it won't give you exactly what the drugs are. So there was issues with Children's Services about that because they would not take that as a positive for drugs. So on the 15th of January, they got a second drug test result. So what they had to do was send the urine off to a separate laboratory for a drug screening to be done to find out exactly what drugs had been taken. And obviously plans were then put in place because they got a list of the drugs that was actually in Jessica and Dylan. So the cross-examination with Jessica's attorney, and she said that if Children's Services hadn't have recommended Dylan being removed from the family, then she would have gone to the judge because Children's Services were umming and ahhing over this unconfirmed positive drug test result. They wouldn't have removed him based on that, but she had strong concerns, and so did Kristen, about Dylan going home with these parents. So if Child Services wouldn't have recommended he be removed, then she would have gone to a judge to get the ball rolling for him to be taken into foster care. Daniel's attorney again asked her if she had any interactions with Daniel or with Jessica, and she hadn't. And the plan was for Dylan to go home with Daniel, as Jessica wouldn't be residing at the home. But even though she knew that Jessica wasn't going to be in the home, she still didn't want Dylan going home with Daniel, and obviously, you know, with damn good reason. She didn't meet with them, but she spoke to staff who had, and they expressed their concerns. She didn't document any conversations she had, which would have helped this case extremely, and I can't understand why she didn't record the conversations, because she based a lot, you know, based some of her decision around what the nursing staff told her about Jessica and Daniel. So it really would have helped the case if she had, but she hadn't. So on to the next witness, which is Stephanie Jenkins, and she works for an organisation called Help Me Grow, which helps parents with premature kids and obviously kids that have been born in this situation to progress and develop. She received the referral from Child Services on the 25th of January, and she tried to contact Jessica but was unable to contact her, so she contacted Child Services on the 31st of January to talk to their caseworker. She couldn't, obviously, because she couldn't get hold of Jessica, she rang the caseworker to make sure she had the correct contact info and that nothing had changed. But she did obtain Daniel's phone number, but Child Services were going out to visit the next day, so Stephanie asked if she could tag along on that visit. She said that was fine. Stephanie rang Daniel and left a message informing him of the visit, but he never replied, so she kept trying him by phone and also sent him a letter. On the 1st of Feb, when this visit had been arranged, she couldn't go due to the weather, so she called and left voicemail, but she received no call, so she tried again on the 4th and 5th of February and left messages, still no call back. She also sent letters. On the 8th of February, Child Services had been to the home. 19th of February, she sent a letter. 28th of February, she tried phoning again, but got no answer. And on the 1st of March, she sent a letter. Nothing. She got no contact back. Hi, sorry, I had to restart because for some reason my screen had frozen. So I was saying that Dylan had been taken off the Help Me Grow programme because of no contact with the parents. So then the cross-examination from Daniel's attorney, basically confirming that being referred onto this programme, the parents agreeing to this is completely voluntary, so it's not mandated for them to actually join in the Help Me Grow programme. So that was that. Now we're on to Patricia Craft, which is, she works for Children's Services. Now this starts, and then because it's such a huge testimony, it gets cut off and then they carry on day 2. So I'm going to go through what they got through on day 1, and then on the next video I'll carry on because it is pages and pages and pages. It is a very, very long testimony. So when witnesses get up, the judge asks them if they want to be on camera. Most of them said yes, but Patricia said she didn't want to, so I don't have a photo of her. So she says, Child Services' main goal is to reunify the child with the family. And she was the caseworker for Dylan and his brother Daniel Groves Jr. Now they start going through the activity log, and it starts on the 11th of January where the caseworker at the hospital has spoke to nursing staff and gone through everything that had happened, asking what unconfirmed positive meant for the drug test. The caseworker spoke to Jessica. I mean, she'd gone through a lot, and it got to a certain point where they were asking about Daniel and saying that he said Jessica didn't use drugs in the home. He didn't know of her drug use until the evening of the birth, which I found absolutely bonkers. And he had said Dylan and Daniel Jr. were his top priority, and he would do what he needs to keep them safe. At this point, there's an objection, and they go up to the bench, and the trial is stopped for the day. Obviously, there's issues with this all these activity logs and what they can and can't say. So they are recessed for the day, and as I said, they continue with her on day 2, and it's an extremely long testimony, so I will leave it there, and I will be back with another video, possibly in 2 parts, depends how long it takes me to get through Patricia's testimony for day 2. So until then, bye for now.